Hey guys and dolls. Before we jump into this episode, a note about our content today. This is created for adult audiences only. We advise listener discretion as this conversation focuses on sexual, physical, and emotional abuse. Might be a lot to take in, so if you need a breather, take a break and come back later. This is Your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lyndsay Soprano. On this show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. Letting go of people in our lives that we once loved or still love for that matter, who have traumatized us, who have treated us like shit, who have hurt us time and time again, is not easy. And almost 2 years ago, I finally started getting on the bandwagon of practicing of letting go of people that needed to go. And they needed to go so long ago. Not just people, but also things and places and experiences that I've held on to for so very long. And I feel that it is a contributing factor for sure. Those people and these things and these places and events that have happened and traumatic things that have happened to me that have kind of sat in my bod for so long. And I do believe that it is a contributing factor to my illness, to chronic disease, so on and so forth, especially in us women, because we take on everything all the time. So now I'm on this rampage and it's like, watch out, baby. Once I figured out that it's okay to let go of these people that have hurt me or taken advantage of me or are just simply ungrateful takers and narcissistic assholes, now my dumpster is like full of these people. Like calling the trash guy, like, hey, we need another one and it needs to be a bit bigger this time because I'm done. I am so done with it. And when you go through trauma recovery, and that can be through your whole life because things happen and then another thing might happen and another thing might happen. And then we get trauma bonding going on. That can be difficult for us to process and get through and let go. My guest today is a freaking rock star when it comes to forgiveness, strength, and living an unapologetic life. And I use that unapologetic life very specifically, and you'll know why as we get talking to her. But if there's anyone here out of the two of us that should have massive amounts of full dumpsters, it's her. So today we are going to talk about survival from a life filled with trauma, so much trauma, and most specifically, human trafficking. And we have not talked about this topic on this show, and we waited for someone like her to come aboard because she's the perfect person to talk to about this, unfortunately. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about how overcoming her traumas was no small miracle, and that we are lucky to have her around to share her stories with us today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my hot as fuck red beautiful lady, Amanda Blackwood. Hello, my darling.
Lyndsay, this is a great way to start. I'm as red as my shirt.
She's a little pinkish hued in her cheeks right now.
And that's not from the elliptical.
No, it is not. It's from Velveeta, which we have found out is her new favorite treat. This episode sponsored by Velveeta macaroni and cheese. Amanda is, and toothpaste. Yeah, exactly. Amanda is an accomplished artist and author, public speaker, podcast host, trauma recovery mentor, and a survivor of human trafficking. She has spoken on a multitude of stages, international summits, radio programs, and has published like a billion books. She has 3, almost 4 podcasts, which I don't understand how the hell she does that because this is like a full-time job doing mine. And she focuses on one of her podcasts, she focuses on interviewing other authors of trauma, which is really cool. So anyways, we're going to get right into it. I'm rolling out the red carpet for you, babe. And when we spoke on our meet and greet, she's so cute, I just can't even stand it. You lovingly coined the phrase trauma vomiting. And I kind of want to hop into that because I think that's going to lead us into a really interesting conversation here about your life. Let's take it from there.
So trauma vomiting is basically what you get when somebody has experienced a bunch of trauma and they need to just get it out of their system, and they will throw it and spew it in whatever direction they can. And a lot of times this is traumatizing to other people. You have to be careful when you're telling your story For one, you have to make sure that the people you're telling it to are safe people to talk to.
Sure.
Because otherwise people can take this and turn it around against you. They can manipulate you with it, and they can use it as a weakness of yours to be able to manipulate you in other ways too.
Interesting. I have like somebody in my mind that just popped up that needs to go in a dumpster.
Or they need to find somebody who's going to be a healthier outlet to talk to.
Sure.
You know, if they have this overwhelming need that they need to get all this out of their body, I definitely had that, which is why I started writing. So I gave my traumas a physical body separate from myself so that I could set it down and walk away from it.
Yeah.
I learned how to paint. I had a therapist. I learned how to cook. All of these different creative outlets help you to deal with all the trauma that you're dealing with. You have to have creative and healthy outlets, not just whoever's going to listen.
Yeah. And I definitely understand that. I have vomited traumatically on many of people. Okay. And other people have done the same to me. And yes, some of it is triggering. So I have a girlfriend in particular that I'm thinking about, not that I need to throw her in a dumpster, but somebody else. And she, and it's like every single time we talk, it is just the constant over and over and over. And I kind of get like almost a little bit resentful and angry about it. And I'm like, is that a me problem, or is that a her problem, or is that a conversation that I need to have? So what do we do when we have people like that in our life that start doing that we can help protect ourselves from not getting harmed from that kind of behavior?
Well, the first step is to establish what it is that we believe our healthy boundaries should be. So healthy boundaries are something that a lot of people, if they've grown up in an abusive situation or a household, they don't even understand what this concept is. This is completely foreign because you weren't allowed to have boundaries as a kid. Now, how are you supposed to establish what your boundaries are now that you're an adult? So you have to establish where your boundaries are, and you have to find a healthy way to communicate those boundaries to somebody who you feel like is having a difficult time respecting you.
Sure.
So when you talk to your friend and you need to put this into words that's not going to necessarily break their heart into a million pieces and piss them off and hurt them
right
in ways that you can't repair, put everything through 3 basic filters. Is it kind? Is it true? Is it necessary? If it's not true, it doesn't need to be said. If it's not necessary, it doesn't need to be said. But if it's not kind, make it as kind as it can be, because the other 2 take precedence.
Yeah. And it's hard to be kind sometimes. I mean, it's for me, I think kindness is easier than hatred and anger and mean and stuff like that. I'm like, it's so much easier to just be nice, you know? But it gets to the point where I'm kind of like, I've got my own stuff that I'm dealing with right now. And I cannot take on anything else, because it also is a pain trigger. Stressful environment, something that somebody says that makes my body just immediately, it takes my pain from maybe a 4 and it pumps it up to a 6 or a 7. And it's amazing how quickly that happens. And I have to be careful to not vomit pain conversations on people too. And so that's something that when you had mentioned that, I was like, oh God. And I catch myself and I go, oh gosh, okay, this is probably not the right time or the place or the person to be doing that. And so I'm catching myself doing it. And it's been since our conversation. You cute little lady, you. I know. Already learned so many things from you in such a short span of time. So even though that we giggle and we're laughing about this stuff, it's not funny, guys. You know, it's not. And, but we have to be a little bit lighthearted. That's why this show is the way that it is because we talk about deep and dark and dirty and twisty things, but we have to add a little bit of the human component of the way that we get through it. And I know for myself, I'm depraved. That's a lot of what I do. It's a lot of humor that comes out of me when I probably should be crying and screaming and I'm just making fun of something, but that's my coping mechanism, right? And I'm trying to work on that myself. But since we're here to talk about human trafficking, unfortunately, I'd like you to give us a little bit of a rundown of what it actually is and debunk what we all may or may not feel or think or have read or have watched on a movie or what have you about what it actually is, and maybe put some stats behind that, what we're actually faced with. Because when I look up California, we're the #1 state of trafficking, and I'm in California, and I'm like, oh, great.
Right. So the first part of it, as I always tell people, you want to get a solid definition of what human trafficking is. You don't want to look this up on Google. You don't want to look it up on Wikipedia. These are fallible resources and they can change depending on who it is that's messing around with those things any given day of the week.
Sure.
You want to go somewhere that's going to be a reputable and reliable and steady source. I prefer to go to the Department of Homeland Security.
Interesting.
So they kind of have precedence over all of the definitions of human trafficking through all of the states. And this is going to be very universal. Their definition of human trafficking is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain commercial sex acts or labor from another person. So if you notice right off the bat, there's several key things that are missing. You hear the word trafficking, you instantly think of being trafficked, as in being in traffic on the road.
Sure, absolutely.
Mention, right. But there's no mention of transportation in the definition. So human smuggling and human trafficking often overlap, but one does not equal the other, and these are completely separate issues that need to be addressed. Wow. So when you hear numbers like the numbers that are coming out of California, how much of this is an overlap? How much of this isn't actually related at all? And people who are getting these stats don't have this basic definition of human trafficking. So another thing that's missing here is age. In the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain commercial sex acts or labor from another person, you don't hear anything about any kind of age limit. We have this assumption here that it only happens to kids. And if you remember, there was a political hashtag that came out several years ago, hashtag Save the Children. Children make up 1/4 of all victims of human trafficking worldwide.
Wow. Yeah, because the first thing you think of is like a kid in the trunk of your car coming over the border from Mexico to California or something like that. I mean, that is exactly where Hollywood and the media have placed that image into our brain.
Right. And you've already hit 3 of the top myths, and you probably don't even realize it. Number 1, the transportation. Number 2, the age. And number 3, there's this aspect of kidnapping.
Yeah, absolutely.
The kid in the trunk of the car, the kid being picked up by a greasy weirdo in a windowless van. That's what we picture.
Yeah.
That's 1 to 2% of all cases worldwide.
Wow.
Most people that are trafficked by people they already know and trust, because they're going to be a whole lot easier to manipulate if you know them first. Most of the time, this is a significant other, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, but it's often also parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers and sisters trafficking their own siblings. This is unfortunately very common. This is the most common form of trafficking, is familial trafficking.
Wow. That's insane. That is absolutely insane.
But if you notice, there's one more thing from that definition that's missing. The mention of gender.
That's what I was going to ask. Thank you. Yeah.
So in recent years, there's been a lot of studies going on. And while we typically think of it only happening to girls or women, there are new estimates coming out that estimate somewhere between 48 and 50% are boys or men.
Whoa. Holy crap.
Yeah.
So it's like a 50-50 split here. That's insane.
Yep.
Wow. I'm really, clearly, I'm aghast. Well, finally the guys get what we get, you know? I'm sorry. That was terrible. I strike that from the record. Wow, though. I mean, I can't. Welcome to the Pain Game podcast, sponsored by Velveeta Macaroni and Cheese. Okay. So you just totally took the words right out of my mouth from that. I'm just like got punched in the stomach with that. Why?
Because those are the people that are going to be most vulnerable.
Interesting. Wow.
People think that boys and men aren't vulnerable to this kind of thing. But
sure.
As it is with my case, most people who end up in trafficking are people who have experienced child abuse at some point in their lives, and they're left feeling vulnerable. They're left feeling like they can't get this love or acceptance or appreciation from anybody. So they're looking for it wherever they can find it. And they end up looking for it in what feels and looks familiar. And if you grew up in an abusive household, chances are you're going to end up in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And so often, especially with things being what they are now, they're going to end up being trafficked, because part of that, the force, fraud, or coercion to obtain commercial sex acts or labor. Commercial sex acts does not mean prostitution. Prostitution does not mean human trafficking. There's a massive overlap there too. 95% of people in prostitution are victims of trafficking.
95%? Jeez
95.
Louise.
And there's another really shocking number with the way things are going right now. You know, we have free and unbridled access to pornography.
Yeah.
85% of all modern pornography is created using victims of human trafficking, just like me. I didn't become famous because I was on Will and Grace or Alias or I modeled for Harley Davidson or any of the super cool things that I did. I became famous overnight because my trafficker put photos and videos of me being trafficked up on pornography websites.
Nobody ever would be able to say that Lyndsay is speechless in their entire life. And I am. It's the podcast, so I got to keep talking. I'm floored by that. I mean, we talked about this briefly in our meet and greet, obviously, but these numbers are insane. So let's talk about your story and what happened to you. And I know that unfortunately, it's not just this quick and dirty little story here about this one time back at camp, you know?
Yeah.
So let's go there. Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. So when we get to the trafficking part is where my world really turns upside down. But there's a lot of stuff that led up to that first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mentioned early child abuse and that kind of stuff. My mother was mentally and emotionally abusive. My father was physically abusive. And my brother was the first person to ever molest me. I was 4 and he was 7. So knowing what I do now, I can look back on it and fully understand that something had happened to him. I don't know who did it. I don't know why it happened. I don't know when it happened. I know nothing about it. I do know that he exhibited a bunch of other signs and symptoms of trauma as well. And he, many years later, said that he didn't remember anything of our childhood before he turned 19 years old. So these are all signs of trauma.
Poor baby.
And knowing that now helps me with the forgiveness part of things.
Right.
It didn't help me with my brain and emotional development as a 4-year-old. So I felt like there was really nobody there for me. You know, I started acting out and had issues in school. And my mother kept on telling me that if all my teachers didn't like me, that there had to be a common denominator. And that if one thing kept on happening to me over and over again, I had to be the one at fault. Well, up until that point, the only person that had ever done anything to me inappropriate like that had been my brother. But when I was 12, I was molested by an uncle by marriage. At 13, it was by a stranger in a swimming pool, in a public pool with lots of people around us. At 15, it was a total stranger in a video store rental parking lot in broad daylight, and nobody did anything. At 16, it was a kid that I worked at a fast food restaurant with. And at 17 was the first time I was ever raped. And it was by a kid that I thought was my best friend. And I'd known him for years. So with this repetitive pattern coming up over and over again, I felt like these people were taking away slices of my soul, little pieces of me. And nobody could see it. They couldn't feel it. They didn't know it was happening. Everything was right there in the open, but nobody would open their eyes to look. When I was 18, I had already been running away from home for several years. I'd spent my 17th birthday in a foster home with some wonderful people. And at 18, I was dating a man who was more than twice my age. I was very vulnerable. I dropped out of high school. I couldn't support myself. He gave me shelter, and he told me he loved me. And then he loaned me out to his best friend for a birthday party.
Loaned you out?
The way it was presented to me, it was going to be an all-expenses paid trip to Las Vegas. And I'd been through Vegas before, and I'd ridden the roller coaster at the top of New York. And I was all excited because I couldn't wait to go back. I wanted to ride the roller coaster and play the video games. I was still just a kid. I was 18, but I was just a kid still.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. We got there, and the front desk people were paid off to not ask questions.
What? Oh, my God.
They were told that I was allowed to order room service only once a day, and that when they brought it up, they had to drop it off at the door and leave so that nobody would have access to me to be able to ask those questions. If I left the room, I wouldn't have been able to get back in because I didn't have a room key. I didn't have my driver's license because I didn't have a driver's license at the time. I didn't have my ID card with me because he kept it so that he could get me on and off the plane. He posed as my father for this trip. And for 52 hours, I was locked up in this hotel room. He would come up and he would do what he was going to do to me. And then he would maybe snack a little bit on whatever room service I'd ordered and either take a nap or go back downstairs and go gambling again. And for 52 hours, I had to put up with this. And if I'd left that room, I would have had no way to get back to where I had been living. I wouldn't have been able to collect what few things that I did own at the time. I would have been homeless on the streets of Las Vegas. I had no family to really be able to stand up for me or to say, come home. We want you. We love you. We're going to take care of you. I was every bit as vulnerable and helpless and alone as I was at 4 years old. And I told myself, I've been through worse. I'll get through this too. So we got back to where I was living at the time, which was in Arizona. And I packed my stuff and I got out as quickly as I could. But what I didn't realize was that the man who had been my boyfriend had ties to the drug cartel and organized crime on the East Coast. And he hunted me for years.
Years?
Years.
My God. Poor thing. I don't even know how you do it. I don't even know how you do it.
I didn't see an alternative.
Yeah.
You know, you go through this kind of stuff and people say, how did you survive? How do you not?
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. You got to take one day at a time, one step at a time. It's like the old adage of how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Yeah. Every single day was a challenge. Yeah. But every single day I made it to the end.
To start all over again the next day. Like, oh my God, you poor baby. Okay. So you're 18. You've done your 52 hours of hell in Vegas, which is pretty much standard issue in Vegas anyway. She couldn't pay me to go back to Vegas. And so now you're being hunted. So then what's happening? What happened? Did he find you?
He did for a very brief period of time. I was living out in the middle of nowhere in Arkansas, and he came with the guy that had taken me to Vegas, and they were knocking on my door, on my front door.
Oh my God. What did you do?
So I did what I could. I left again. I had already gotten married at that point, and I got married hoping that a name change would make it more difficult to find me.
Sure.
That didn't work.
Yeah.
But I'd injured myself on a horse farm. I was working out there at this horse farm, and I absolutely loved that job. Oh my gosh, it was such a passion for me.
Well, especially equine therapy for people that have been, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh
that's exactly why.
I didn't get to ride any of them. It didn't even matter. They were straight Egyptian Arabians and the most gorgeous horses I've ever seen in my life. And I got to go out and brush them and comb them and give them treats and feed them. And they were wonderful. Yeah. They were so cool. And there were several that I really had to work with to earn their trust. And that was massively helpful for me.
Interesting.
So when I injured myself and this guy showed up on my front porch and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And the man that I'd married was also more than twice my age and turned out to be quite abusive. Again, these patterns.
Yeah.
I told this to my boss while I was getting the MRI done on my knee. And my boss said, I've got a guest house here. We'll get you, just stay there. You're not going home. Stay there for now.
Good.
We need to get surgery done on your knee. Once we get the surgery done, I've got another horse farm in this other state, and I want you to work there. You'll have a steady income. You will have a place of your own, and you can really get on your feet. Yeah. This man was a savior. He was a Vietnam War veteran and a former prisoner of war. He knew what it was to survive rough stuff.
Yeah, no kidding.
So the surgery that needed to happen, I was going to go down to Florida, which is where the other horse farm was. And I got all the way down there, and a lot of stuff happened on this journey. And I got all the way down to the Daytona Beach bus station. And I called up my grandmother because the plan that had already been set in place was she had agreed I would come and stay with her until I could get my surgery and get myself back on my feet, and I'd be doing better and I could go off and live my life. And I got all the way there. It was about 10:30 at night, standing at the Daytona Beach bus station. And I called my grandmother and said, "Hey, I'm here. I'm ready for you guys to come and pick me up." And she didn't answer the phone. It was her husband, my dad's stepfather.
Okay.
And he answered. And when I told him that I'm here, I'm ready to be picked up, he said, "We're not coming to get you. You're on your own. Good luck." And hung up the phone. What I didn't know was that my parents had called and said, "She's running from her problems again. If you take her in, we'll never speak to you again."
I don't like your family.
Me neither.
Let's be honest. I do not care for these people at all.
I said that makes two of us, but honestly,
God.
That makes a whole bunch of us.
Yeah, no kid. Everyone that's listening right now is really pissed off. God, you poor baby. I'm just like, all right, if you're having a bad day today, let's kind of reboot, okay? Could be worse. Just saying. Oh my Lord. Okay, so keep going. I'm on the edge of my seat.
So here I was at the Daytona Beach bus station, bawling my eyes out, tears streaming. I'm just sobbing, hugging my knees. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I've got $5 to my name. I've got nothing. I've got nowhere to go. I don't know this city. And this young couple got off a bus from New York and walked over to where I was, and they saw me crying. And they were so sweet. He was in his mid-20s. She looked like she was about 18. And they asked me what was wrong, and I told them. And they said, "We've got a place where you can stay until you can get on your feet." He was in his mid-20s, and she was 15.
Yeah, I knew this was what was going to be coming out of your mouth. Okay, keep going. Great.
What they meant when they said we got a place you can stay until you get on your feet was we got a place where you can stay until we find the highest bidder.
Yeah.
They sold me like a bag of potato chips to a guy named Esteban. Was locked up for 23 and a half hours in a small room with no food, no water, no bathroom facilities. And as you are well aware, I am a huge fan of Richard Dean Anderson and the TV show MacGyver from the 80s and 90s because I grew up watching that show.
I thought you were going to say mac and cheese.
No, well, yeah, that too. I also grew up on mac and cheese. My mother was a terrible cook. I learned how to cook out of self-defense.
That's funny.
Yeah, I have to take that back. She was a terrible cook with everything except for biscuits. Oh my gosh, she has the best biscuits on the planet, and I will probably never get that recipe because I don't plan on talking to her again.
No, and if we do, we're going to poison them and put them on her porch. Just saying.
But I've moved on from all of that anger that I used to have for her. If I ever did do something like that, well, I mean, they wouldn't be poisoned, but they would probably be better than hers, and it would be just me trying to show off.
Take that. Shove that up your biscuit, bitch.
She absolutely hated being called mother. So that's exactly what the note would say.
Absolutely.
Dear mother.
Oh my God. Okay, so you're sold to the highest bidder like a package of potato chips. And do you mind me asking how much you were sold for?
I believe it was somewhere around the sum of $90.
Oh my God.
And I was worth a little bit more because of the red hair.
Oh my God. People are so fucked up.
Yeah. So there's this whole myth around red hair about red-haired women especially are high-spirited and they're bullheaded and determined. Well, I mean, that's all true, but they were willing to pay more because they wanted the opportunity to break that spirit. And because there's such a small percentage of redheads worldwide that we're seen as exotic. Wow. Humans are not exotic. Animals can be exotic. Humans are just different. We're not exotic. So I MacGyvered my way out, and I actually did write a book about just this incident. It's called Detailed Pieces of a Shattered Dream. And at the time when I wrote the book, I thought that it was my only experience of having existed in the world of trafficking, because I saw that as a form of kidnapping. And I thought that 1% to 2%, that prevailing myth, is what trafficking looked like. So it turned out later on, I found out in 2018 that I had actually been trafficked 3 different times in my life. But the average number of somebody being trafficked is 7. So these numbers are shocking. Imagine coming to the realization of somebody saying all of these numbers up on a stage in front of you when you think that you're going there to help kidnapped children, and you learn that you are the kidnapped child that you're there to help.
Oh, wow.
So I left Florida, and the farthest I could get from Florida.
I left Florida.
I've never been back, by the way.
Don't. Nobody needs to be in Florida.
No.
Stay away.
And I have been all over the world. I was a flight attendant, for Pete's sake. So I left there, and the farthest I could get without actually having a passport at that time was California. I mean, without freezing my butt off up in Washington or Oregon. I wasn't willing to go that far. So I went to LA, and that's where I was on the TV shows, and I did the modeling. I did all this really cool stuff. That was about the time that internet dating became a big thing, and everybody is trying it out. And I'm still looking for my footing and looking for personal validation. And I'm still putting my self-worth in the hands of others with being on TV and modeling, and feeling like that's the acceptance that I'm wanting and needing and craving, because I've never had it. Meanwhile, I jump on one of these internet dating websites, and I find this man that I find absolutely gorgeous. I thought he was striking. Yeah. So handsome. He's tall. He's good looking. He's a gorgeous accent, but he lives really far away. So we knew right off the bat, we're probably not going to be meeting in person, but this was when Skype was more prevalent than Zoom. We got on Skype calls all the time. So with an 8-hour time difference, he would be having breakfast while I'd be having dinner, and we would have a meal together before he would go to work and before I would go to sleep. And this was regular occurrence. We got to know each other really well. There were none of these filters or anything on Skype back then either. So I actually saw him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And over a period of 7 years, we got to know each other really well. I told him almost everything about my life. I didn't tell him about Arizona/Vegas because I really wasn't willing to talk about that until about 5 years ago. But he knew all the other stuff. He knew about my family. He knew that I was pretty much alone in the world. And he watched me get into relationships and then exit the relationships. He saw me develop from being a nobody who was constantly seeking this validation to getting a job as a mall cop to 5 months later busting open a major embezzlement ring and sending some people to prison to taking over as the director of public safety and security for 6 properties in LA County. I worked hard.
No kidding. Wow, woman.
And here I was in this job where I had established myself. I got an $11,000 a year raise. I got raises for all of my employees. I was managing things in ways that nobody had seen fit to figure out previously. I revolutionized the scheduling system for that company. I walked into a room and people stood up and respected me. I established myself. I had my own apartment with no roommates, no boyfriends. I got a cat. I had my own car. I had everything. And I'd known this man for 7 years, and he was so proud of me. He came over to visit me, and I went over there to go and visit him over to Scotland. And finally, after all these years, he asked me to get a fiancé visa. He wanted me to marry him. And he asked me to move to Scotland to go and be with him. So I got my fiancé visa. It took me 7 years to get there, and it took him 7 days to start trafficking me.
Holy shit.
I was 31 years old. The oldest person in recent years to be pulled out of trafficking just here in the state of Colorado was in her 70s.
Oh, my Lord.
The youngest was 3 months old.
It's just freaking crazy. This is just movie after movie after bad movie after bad movie after bad movie. And then being like, I mean, did you get like, were people like why didn't you learn from the first time? Or why didn't you learn from the second time? Did you get any of that shit? Because that's what I feel people would start saying. Like, we don't even believe you anymore. Give me a break, which I think is horrible. Don't get me wrong. But as a human being that, these are what people think, like, oh, she's just doing it for attention, or I don't even understand how any of this could be real. Like, this is insane.
Well, not only have people asked me those questions, but I have been asked those questions by podcast hosts.
Oh my gosh.
I take it with grace and dignity.
Right? Give me a break. I would never second guess one word that would come out of your mouth. Plus, I've read your stuff too. So,
it is really nice to feel heard, because I wasn't for so long. Of course, I also wasn't stepping into my own story. I wasn't owning it. I was scared of it.
No kidding. How could you? Why would you want to put on those shoes again and go back and walk all of those steps and those crazy, sad, scary places that you were from such a young age, even going back to 4 years old? I mean, your poor little body and your poor little life. I mean, you're amazing. No. Amazing. But you already know that.
I struggle with it though. And that's a trauma response. And I have to accept that and recognize it for what it is. I don't think I'm amazing. I think I have been given the gift of being able to share this story. And so I'm not going to stop, because if this means that one more person can figure out what they went through, has a name, so they can get the help that they need, then so be it. Sure. My story doesn't belong to me. My story belongs to all the people who've been permanently silenced.
So what do we do? What can we do to help fight against this?
We want to find reputable organizations that know what they're doing. The ones that will actually do the hard work. So as an example, there's an organization called Compass 31. They're based down in Colorado Springs. They have a seal of transparency on their website, and you can look up their financial records to figure out where every single penny of this organization is going and the work that they're doing.
That's cool. Yeah.
Meanwhile, you've got other organizations that are saying they need $32,000 to run a mission to be able to pull 5 children out of trafficking. They're focusing on children. They're focusing on children in other countries. And then they're taking the stories of these victims and sharing them to be able to elicit more money from donations, while none of that money is going to the victims whose stories they essentially stole. This is a form of exploitation.
Yeah.
So we have to narrow it down to figure out who actually needs the help. And if you find these organizations and you feel like you're not sure what they're going to do with your money, you're not sure what you want to be able to do to help, don't ask them how much money they need. Ask them what physical items they need. Do they need toothbrushes? Do they need coats, blankets, socks, shoes, pillows, backpacks, whatever, teddy bears?
Yeah.
If they need the physical things, they're probably the ones that are actually going to spend the money appropriately. And if you're still not comfortable giving them the money, then buy the darn coats.
No kidding. Yeah, I do that actually with, there's some people in my world that are financially a little bit unstable. And we would originally just like give them money or whatever. And then we're like, you know what? We're not going to do that. We're going to we will pay your gas bill, or we will help, we will do these things instead, because we know where that gift is going, at least, instead of like, oh, you just showed up in a new pair of sneakers. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So that's really good. That's really good advice in regards to that, because it's true. And that goes with anything. I mean, any charity that we want to get involved in, and we donate our money, and we don't necessarily always look at what's really going on with our donation. And so that's something for us to learn and to understand and to pay more attention to as a whole, but specifically in this. Yes, this is great. So now I guess my question then comes into start moving into your healing and your forgiving and letting go of this anger, and how you even do that, because you've been wait, hold on a second. So the gentleman in Scotland, what ended up happening with him?
Oh my gosh. Now that's a wild roller coaster too. So it was 7 days after I got there that he started trafficking me. And basically it became like a revolving door in the front of the house. So people would come over. He wasn't taking me anywhere to traffic me. I was staying in the home. Wow. People would come in. They would exchange money if it was actually money, or they would take care of that in advance if it was electronic. He was advertising me on a dating website, and there's certain terminology that was used where people knew what to expect, and this is what the situation is. If I didn't do as I was being told to do, I would have at first food deprived of me.
Yeah.
Later on, it was sleep deprivation. At one point, that lasted up to 8.5 days, I believe. It gets a little foggy after about 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, no kidding.
And eventually waterboarding, just for sport, to see what would happen. So I call it sport torture because things need to have names. If you need to figure out how to move beyond something, you have to give it a name. It has to have its own form of existence so you can walk away and leave it behind. So I was a victim of trafficking and sport torture simultaneously. After that first week of the abuse, I decided that, it's time to get out. I am done. I can't handle this. If this was once or twice, I think I would have been okay with dealing with it because of everything that I'd already been through. And that's a pretty messed up mindset too.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I kept on telling myself that same thing that I told myself way, way back in the beginning. I've been through worse. I'll get through this too. The truth was that I hadn't been through anything worse. I'd never been through anything like this in my life. It was like all of those experiences mushed up into one band of rubber balls that was going to explode. And this was every single day. So for a while in my early 20s, I had been a waitress at a restaurant. And I remembered the old story of making sure that the coffee cup is always full. And I did that with his whiskey cup. And I got him very, very, very drunk. While the abuse was occurring, I kept making sure that I filled up his whiskey cup. At the end of the night, he was so drunk that I told him, if you give me back my passport and my driver's license and my debit card, I can go down to the bank tomorrow and go pull out my money out of the bank. And then I can give it to you so that we can put it in your account and we can spend it. Because otherwise it's just going to sit there forever and rot and we'll never do anything with it. He bought it and he gave me back my documents that night while he was still drunk. And I hid them. And the next morning, rather than going down to the bank, I jumped on a computer and I looked for the first flight out that I could afford. So the first day out was like $12,000. There's no way I could afford an emergency flight like that. I had a little over $2,000 in my account. Well, the next day was too expensive. The next day was too expensive. The first flight out that I could afford, I would have to wait 5 days for. So I bought the ticket. I had like $11 and some change left over in my account after that. And I got this ticket and I said, I'll get through this. I've been through worse. I'll get through this too. And in that 5 days, the abuse got so bad that I ended up with a kidney infection that nearly killed me. And I was in the hospital when that flight took off. It was a non-refundable flight. So the next way that I tried to get out was by taking my own life.
Yeah.
I was done. My entire life had been nothing but pain. I didn't see any way out of this situation. I saw no way of being able to survive. I was done. But I also knew that I didn't want to die.
Yeah, right. That's kind of the rub with killing yourself.
Right. So it was a weird
At
position
least that's
to be
what
in.
the word on the street is.
So it was a really weird position to be in, of course.
No kidding. God.
So I had done the research. I'd done a lot of research over the years, not just in psychology, but on the best ways of being able to end your life, ironically. And the best way that I could find that would be accessible to me right then was what I decided on. So I left the house that day and I walked to the local church. It was built in the 1600s. And I sat on the steps and I prayed that somebody would see me. Not just look at me and not my circus, not my monkeys, me, but actually see me as a human being. And people walked by and they did exactly what I expected. They didn't want to look at me. And then I sat down in the graveyard for a while, leaning up against a headstone that had the year 1776 was the only thing on the headstone I could still read. And for anybody outside of the U.S., that's the year that we claimed independence from England. And here I am, an American in Scotland, part of the UK, and I take it as a sign. All right, this is where I need to be. And I sat there for an hour and still nobody saw me. And eventually I got up and made my way to the train station. My plan was to sit at the platform and have my one last cigarette Back then I was a smoker. I'm not now, thankfully. My worst vice is the Velveeta macaroni and cheese. But while I was sitting there smoking my cigarette, a man walked out onto the platform and he saw me smoking and he asked me for a light. And I handed him my lighter and I told him, you can keep this. I won't need it anymore. And I wanted him to ask me why. And he didn't. And I knew I couldn't make this total stranger care. I hadn't been able to make anybody care. I was 31 years old. I'd never made anybody really care. And I knew that was it. That was probably the last conversation I would ever have on this earth. I knew exactly what time the train was expected. And when I was done with my cigarette, I was going to get up and walk along the tracks until I got to a place where the train would still be traveling at full speed, and I would step in front of the train. And while
this is how you decided this was going to be it.
This was going to be it.
Well, that's ballsy. I'll tell you that, especially for a woman. No, and I'm not even being jokey about that because, you know, when we think about that kind of stuff, women, you're like, well, we don't want to look ugly. We don't want to be splattered and, you know, like it'd be like we're pills, you know, I would never have thought that you would say, you know what, I just decided I'm going to go jump in front of a train.
I didn't want to be recognizable. I didn't want anybody to know what had ever happened to me. I just wanted to disappear because no matter what I had ever been through, I didn't want to put my parents through that kind of pain.
Seriously, ways.
Because no matter how much I'd hurt, I still loved them. They were still my parents.
Yeah.
And him, I wouldn't give him the dignity of knowing that I ended my life because of him.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of emotion tied up in that. It was a very thought out decision.
Okay, well, you're not splattered all over a train, so
what happened?
So I think that didn't work out. Oh my God. I didn't know that part. Holy moly. Okay.
So while I was sitting there at the platform thinking about this, and I got it all planned out in my head, and I know that I have to get up in approximately 2 minutes to be able to head down to the tracks to be able to get there in time, a little boy walked out on the platform, and the man that asked me for the light, he took his hand. That was his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And this little boy looked at me. You know, when you're having a bad day and you got a kid looking at you, you will do what you can to cheer yourself up and smile so that the kid doesn't look upset because they emulate our emotions. I did that and it didn't work. That kid looked right through me. I begged all day long for somebody to see me, and the only person who could was an innocent 4-year-old child. And I knew in that moment I could not do to that child what had been done to me at that same age. I could not take away his innocence. I could not destroy him for the rest of his life. And it took me about 20 seconds to realize that I was running back to my prison. I was not running toward the train. And I was grateful and I was happy to the point of rejoicing and jumping and shouting because I knew that if I was going to be kept alive in that moment, after everything that I had planned, that there had to be a reason. I was resigned to die, and now I was determined to live. And I ran all the way back, and the whole way back, I kept on thinking to myself, there's another way. There's got to be another way. I will figure this out. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to survive, and I'm going to be great. My life is going to mean something to somebody, even if it's just me. And in that short 1 mile walk or run, as it were, or skip from the train station, I decided that I had studied enough psychology in my life, just on my own privately, that I knew about Stockholm syndrome, which is what we call trauma bonding now. And I was going to get back, convince him that I had trauma bonding, and make him believe that I would do anything for him. And over a period of about a month, I kept on leaving these little breadcrumbs. And when early June rolled around, I told him, I've been here since January. And I've stayed beyond what we told the authorities we would use as our wedding date, and we didn't get married. So if I overstay my welcome, I can get kicked out of the UK and never allowed back according to UK custom and law. And you could lose your job as a police officer, and we wouldn't want that, would we?
Oh my God.
But if you send me back, I can return in 6 months, just in time for Christmas. It'd be our first Christmas together. Wouldn't it be wonderful? Within 2 hours, I had a round-trip flight that would have landed me back in Scotland in time for Christmas.
Wow. Wow. Where did you fly to?
I went straight back to California.
Sister.
Yep. I ended up roommates with somebody that had been one of my employees when I was in the field of security. I had known her brother before I knew her. We hit it off when we'd become friends. And the whole time I was in Scotland, she knew something was up, but she didn't really understand what it was. She didn't have all the information.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Nobody had all the information.
No.
Me.
Whoopsie. Yeah. Holy moly. Okay.
So we get back and I'm living there with her. She's working graveyard shift. So when she goes to work at night, I sleep in the bed. And when I get up in the morning, she's coming home from her graveyard shift. She sleeps in the bed and I go to work.
Okay.
And it worked out really well for a while until she got a word of what it was that had happened to me. Because this man kept on taking all these photos and videos he had taken of me while I was being trafficked and sending them to employers every time I got a job. So I lost jobs. And he would send them to friends. If he found out I made friends with anybody, I would lose friends. He was alienating me from everybody. He came looking for me. He had my address off by one number. I saw him banging on the neighbor's door. It was a terrifying time for me. And this... I'll call her a girl. She's not even a woman. I can't call her a woman. I'm sorry.
Hey, don't apologize. You absolutely, this is what I said about unapologetic life, by the way, in the very beginning of this episode.
She was not mature enough to be considered a woman. I hope that's changed for her now. She didn't understand how anything like this could happen without my permission.
Sure.
So she started telling people I had been a high-priced call girl. She was my best and only friend until that point.
Wow.
The next several years were spent with me doing whatever I could, trying to get away from bad people and trying to alienate anyone and everyone. I was lashing out. I was doing whatever I could. Before all of this, I was absolutely terrified of flying. I didn't like flying. I went to Scotland on a plane. You know, don't do that to me. But it was to the point there where I didn't care if I lived or died. My life was in so much pain and I was so alone and I was so isolated from everybody and everything that I went to an interview and got hired to be a flight attendant. I easily could have been a hermit for the rest of my life, and I tore myself out of that comfort zone and said, I am not going to do that because I've got a bucket list and I'm going to knock these things off of this bucket list before I go. And I still wasn't sure how long I was going to live, but I knew that when I went, it was going to be at my own hand. And I had a set number of years I was allowing myself to get this stuff done. And I went and did it all.
That's my girl. Well, and I think it's interesting that you chose planes and being a hostess with the mostest, because you would be able to get places quickly and get flights for, like it seems strategic. And without me, did you even know that that's kind of what you were doing? Like you were thinking about your bucket list, but the first thing that popped in my head was, well, yeah, because she can flee.
I can get out.
Yeah. Yep. Wow.
And I'm never home that way. I'm gone 4 or 5 days a week. He'll never find me this way.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah. And I didn't even think about that at the time, but it did kind of hit me later on. I was definitely on the run. I was in martial arts classes. I was taking jujitsu 2 days a week. I was taking Wing Chun on Sundays. I was doing everything I could to try and bolster myself and build my self-confidence and my strength and my ability to defend myself. Silently defending myself.
God.
because I wouldn't tell anybody what had happened. Eventually, I was so alienated from anybody and anything that I left that job after 2 years, 3 months, 28 days. Not that I was counting.
Not at all.
I loved it, but it was time to move on.
Yeah.
And I moved out here to Colorado in 2016. Went to an anti-trafficking conference in 2018. That's when I discovered what I went through was exactly what it is. And in 2019 is when he made me famous on the pornography website. I had seen some people speaking at this conference, though. And they were running an anti-trafficking organization. And I reached out to them and said, hey, I'm desperate. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to live with this. I don't know if I want to live with this. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And they paired me up right away with a group that partners with law firms who work with survivors of trafficking pro bono. And this law firm in New York, I had a big name law firm that was going out and going after these pornography websites with cease and desist orders and having all this stuff pulled down. Every time one went down, 2 more went up somewhere else.
Oh my God. It's insane.
Yeah. I was fighting an uphill battle.
No
This
kidding.
man's still making money off of me.
To this day.
Yes, definitely.
Ugh.
But at the time, he was
Unbelievable.
also including all of my social media and any personal information that he could find on me with these videos and photos. I was asked for my autograph in a grocery store one day. And it wasn't for the cool stuff I'd done. And
No,
the guy-
of course not.
Right. And the guy
Gross.
showed me like he was proud. This is why he wanted my autograph.
I do not understand that. It is like impossible for my brain to even wrap myself around what you've been saying this hour. Well, this is a lot. This is a lot to take in here. Okay, so did you give him his autograph?
Actually,
Sorry, I had to.
what I did will have a lasting impact on this man for the rest of his life.
Oh my God, do tell.
First, I burst into tears
Sure.
and within about 2 seconds stopped. And I stared him straight in the face. I said, I need you to understand something. I'm stuck on this planet for however long I live. And what you've just done has the tendency to shorten that.
Oh, so good. So good.
None of that, none of what you've seen of me
Wow.
was ever by choice. And as long as you are watching it, as long as you are sharing it, as long as you are telling people about it, you are doing more damage than you can possibly ever imagine.
Oh my God.
And I don't know where that came from, but I walked away with him holding his phone in his hands and his jaw just hanging open.
Yeah.
I walked away. I left my groceries and everything, just walked out. And I walked out into the parking lot and completely just downpour. I sobbed, I screamed, I cried. People thought I was completely insane. And I reached out to that anti-trafficking organization and they paired me up with a counselor, a therapist. I traumatized her so bad she left the industry forever.
Whew. Do you have a drinking problem by any chance? Because
I
would.
in Scotland. I did in Scotland. And I can count how many times I've been drunk after Scotland on a single finger.
Yeah, exactly. Good for you. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so your counselor who's there to help you gets out of there because she can't handle it. She can't handle the truth. She can't handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
No, you
Amen.
cannot. Yeah. Well, you've got to be a type of woman that can hear this kind of stuff too, and be. I mean, I'm a complete crybaby. I've been crying for half of this episode, but I'm sad that she did that to you. But she was also putting up a boundary for herself and the way that she needed to protect herself from this, which is kind of circling back to what we started with at the beginning of our episode. Wow. Do you know what happened to her? Is she doing anything? Or is she working for Velveeta for craft foods?
I think she is an elementary school counselor now. So
Okay.
she's no longer in therapy for trauma survivors, but she still wanted to follow that passion.
That's good. Yeah. And have her eyes peeled for kids that might be demonstrating some behavior that might be similar in nature.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope she learned something.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. We're all learning a bunch of stuff today. Holy moly. I'm just like, you talk about everyone has a story. You have like 5,000 of them in 1 hour. I'm just like, and I know how I opened up and I started talking about depravity and us laughing and doing it. And it's not because we think this is funny. I have not gone through anything even close to what you've gone through, but I have certainly gone through a lot of crap in my life. And I have to face some of that stuff that I had to start talking about and dealing with and looking at myself in the mirror of some things that happened to me by doing this show. It was the only way I was going to start talking about it. And so it's been 2.5 years since I started actually telling the truth about things that happened to me when I was a little girl, when I was a teenager, when I was in high school, when I was married, all of these things. And it's empowering. It's also very, very fucking scary. And it's very sad, but it also makes me laugh because I made it and I got through some really, really horrible things. And I have to. It's the only way I can do it. I cry a lot too, but I laugh a lot. And I'm grateful for the people that have come into my life, not unlike yourself, that have helped create this space that we can talk openly and honestly. And maybe we touched one person today. I think we touched a lot of people, quite frankly. So when you're talking about, yes, we are crossing all of our fingers and toes here for that one. So, and I know we're getting close on time here. So before we leave, I want to talk about really quick about how you can help others and how you actually did heal from traumas such as this and how you've been able to do that and celebrate these wins in your life, because you're pretty, and I said it earlier and I'm going to say it again, damn it. You're pretty freaking amazing. Yeah. And I think that as an inspiration to so many people, both men and women in this world, I just, my hat's off to you for how you hold yourself and how you've done all of this to try to help others as well. I mean, you're incredible. So talk to us about that.
Well, holding myself has everything to do with the modeling thing. I have good posture.
And she's so beautiful to look at as well.
Oh, you're sweet. Thank you.
It's true.
So the second therapist really was a huge help.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the things I tell people is that a therapist isn't there to wave a magic wand. The work is yours to do. The therapist is just there as the tour guide. If you don't like your therapist, 90% of people lie to their therapist. If you don't like your therapist, if you can't trust your therapist, if you can't talk to your therapist, find one you can.
Amen.
You're spending money on this. Spend it wisely. You wouldn't spend your money on a TV that you wouldn't watch.
Yeah. It's true. Right. That sounds absolutely ridiculous. Right. But yeah, it's true. It took me forever to find mine. And he is incredible. He's my little owl and he listens to the show. I love you. No. And he is just amazing because I can tell him whatever the hell I want to. Yeah. And I trust him with every ounce of information that I would ever say. And if you can't, what the hell is the point?
Right.
I mean, you're tearing up $200, or whatever you're paying.
Flush it right down the toilet. Let somebody else have it because it ain't mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was definitely a huge help. That was the right help at the right time.
Yeah.
I got through it at the end of our session. So about a year and a half later, it was December of 2020 is when I wrote my entire autobiography, all 350 pages in a Word document. So it's not exactly short. All while working 2 full-time jobs to make ends meet because my roommate had lost his job. When I got done writing the book, she asked me, "What are you going to do next?" I said, "I have no idea." She said, "I want you to try painting." I said, "Anytime I tried to paint, it looks like a multicolored snowman laying on his side. I'm a failure in the art world when it comes to paints." She said, "I don't care. I want you to try." And since then, I've now sold my art internationally. I've had my own solo art exhibit, all with paintings. I've sold them to anti-trafficking organizations that have made prints to be able to sell the prints so they can afford therapy for others.
Oh, neat.
I sold one large piece to a home for human trafficking survivors in Chicago and was written about in the Chicago Tribune. My autobiography was published on my 10-year anniversary from freedom from trafficking, which was on June 19th of 2021. And in July of 2021 is when I met the man that's now my husband.
Somebody's putting up with you. I love it. Congratulations.
He's doing so much. He's the one that supports me and encourages me and tells me you're on a mission. You've got a message for the world and you need to do that. And I know that without having a large dual income, we're not going to, have the big fancy house. We can live without it. There's people without homes, and we don't get the fancy, extravagant steak dinners out all the time, but you're an excellent cook. So I get up on stages and I talk about him, and I talk about how he's this kind, patient, resilient, amazing, humble, generous, gentle man who has just learned to love me for the first time in my life. Somebody loves me. Not what I look like, not my personality, not, the way my nose wrinkles. Me, the inside me.
Yeah.
And he read my full autobiography before we ever got engaged. And he said that as soon as he laid it down, he knew that if I could go through everything that I'd been through and still look for love, that he needed a lot more of that in his life. And the beautiful irony is that I met him on the same dating website that I was being trafficked on.
Oh my God. You, like I said, you're ballsy. You went back on that website. Holy crap. Oh my
I had to
gosh.
fight back against my fears.
Hey, more power to you. Go for it, man. I mean, that's insane. Wow. Awesome. What a great story. Talk about full freaking circle. That's awesome. I love him. I do. Yeah, I just love him.
He's amazing.
Well, I kind of like you too. Kyle, we love you, Kyle. We love you, Kyle. Thank you for taking the people like your husband and my sweetie as well. They take on these people like us that have gone through some pretty wackadoo things and some pretty horrible things. And it comes up and it comes out. And sometimes something will trigger me and I don't even remember what the hell just happened. Like, it's almost like I'll have almost like a blackouty kind of a moment. And he's able to recognize when those are happening. And it's a scary spot for him. But now we kind of know how to do it.
Yeah.
And how to basically hold on and make sure that I feel safe, because safety, obviously, and fear are huge issues when you have been traumatized. And so feeling safe is incredibly important. And I know I have it, and I'm so happy that you do too. It's pretty rad. It's pretty rad.
These are special people in our lives.
These are, and we use the word very special in this household in all kinds of different ways. You're being really special right now, honey. Real special.
We do the same. I knew I liked you.
What is going on? Or we use a lot of, I do a lot of Rain Man with him too. I'm like, you are super Rain Man today. What's going on?
See, of the two of us, I'm way more Rain Man. All these statistics and stuff in this head.
Yeah. Sure. Well, that's definitely him. I mean, he rattles off stuff. You're like, how the hell do you know that? Like, but you don't know where the cheese goes in the refrigerator. What the hell is wrong here?
My husband's the same way.
They know they know where to grab it. They know where to get it. They just don't know where to put it back. That's it.
Yep.
That's half of the problem, though. Hello.
Yep. And my husband works in aerospace. He's no dummy.
Oh my God.
He's literally a rocket scientist.
That is hysterical. We've got to end with something like this because we both love to laugh, even in the midst of the shadows, and the stuff that's happened to us in our lives. This is a good representation of what it is like to survive through some pretty crazy shit in life and still end up being beautiful and amazing and successful and being a powerhouse in this world. And you're after it and you're going after it and you're going to continue to go after it to help others. And I'm grateful and blessed that you chose to be on this show with me. So thank you.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to cry again. Jesus. I
am
a mess here.
I would hug you so hard if I could. Oh my God.
I know. We have to meet. I'm just not going to go to Colorado. You have to come to California.
I don't know if I'm willing to go back.
That's true. We're kind of spooky out here.
Yeah. And the halfway point would be Vegas, and you've already said no to that. I'm not big on Vegas either.
No, I'd rather I go anywhere but Vegas. Oh my God. Well, and I'm going to Scotland this summer. And so now I'm like, oh, I don't know. Should I go to Scotland now?
I still want to go back. It wasn't the country or the people there that trafficked me. It was one individual who turned out to be evil.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'll go.
Yeah.
I've never been. Oh, well, hey, maybe you can meet me out there. We're going, actually, I think we're going in October.
Ooh, that's a nice time to go.
Yeah, because we don't want to go during the summer. Too busy. But anyways, I digress because we don't really need to be talking about my summer travels right now on this show. Well, thank you so much for being as brave as you have been and how you are right now and how you will continue to be. You are an inspiration to me for sure, and absolutely everybody's ear holes that have listened to you. Please don't complain about like your hair not working today or whatever the hell we get all pissed off about and whatever we get bent about. Remember stories like this. Take yourself into a place where you're like, whoa, hold on. I am losing my shit over something that does not matter. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us before we hit the dusty trail here? Because I want to talk to you forever and we can't.
I want to tell people that if you're in a position where you're in a place of violence, abuse, trafficking, whatever it might be, not knowing what resources are available to you is the same as not having those resources. We live in the age of the internet. If you need help finding those resources, reach out to me. I will do everything I can to help you. And whenever you hear that phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, just know it's a lie.
Total lie. I hate it.
The man who came up with that phrase, Friedrich Nietzsche, died in an insane asylum. We can let it go. The truth is not that the past is what made you stronger. It is not the abuse. It is not the abusers. It is not the traumas. It is you. You dug deep and got through it. Give the credit where it's due. Pat yourself on the back and recognize how amazing you are.
It's absolutely perfect. You couldn't have nailed that any better than what you just did. Okay, so how do we find you? Because she gave me 13,000 links. Because she's written so many books and she's got 3 and almost 4 podcasts, like I mentioned at the beginning. Where's the best place for us to find you right now if we need you?
Go to Growth from Darkness. You'll find all my social media links. You'll find a contact form. You'll find a set up a meeting form. Talk to me. There's even a little chat box down there where it sends me an email and I can reach out to you and we can talk.
Thank you for doing that. For anybody that's listening to this show, if you need any help, please reach out to either of us as well. I will connect you with her if you forget something or you're scared or what have you. Please reach out. That's why we're here. That's why we show up. We're showing up for you and we're showing up for ourselves as well. Thanks again for your time with us today. I really, really appreciate it. And I love you. And thank you so much for surviving and not jumping in front of the fucking train.
That little boy's an adult by now. He has no idea he saved someone's life.
Well, if you're listening, we love you. You are exclusively invited to share this growth from darkness VIP pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side. Do you know somebody that is living in and with chronic pain or has had any similar experiences to what you've heard today? Please reach out to me, reach out to Amanda. We are here to help you. We would love to connect you and provide a safe place for you to unleash and share and cry and laugh, whatever you need. We're here for you. Please follow the Pain Game Podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.